Good evening and welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have on Michael Fremer. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
I am actually a big fan of you. I've been watching you for a very long time, and your knowledge and your wealth of knowledge on music and audio and hi-fi and records is it dwarfs mine in musicology. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
I co-wrote and did voices on an animated film called Animal Olympics in 1980. So the other voices were Gilda Radner, Billy Crystal, and Harry Shearer, and me. So now they've all drifted off into obscurity, and I'm a huge star. But the funny thing is, I'm the person who hired Harry Shearer for his first animated voiceover work because.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and then he ended up being The Simpsons, but I hired him first because I knew about him from an album called was it The Credibility Gap? Yeah, he did a comedy album with Lenny and Squiggy, Mike McKean and
right. Well, before Spinal Tap, guys.
Yeah, way in the 70s, and it is called I think The Credibility Gap. I could go find it in my room there, and he did a hilarious impression of Johnny Carson. I mean, they did the whole Johnny Carson show. It's hilarious. So that's how he got hired. And then at that point, he was friends with Billy Crystal. They're not friends anymore. And so he brought Billy along and said, you mind if Billy Crystal comes and does some? No, that's fine. And, it's funny because this movie's from 1980. And just yesterday, I sent out a package. Some person sent me a letter and an envelope. And it had 2 slicks from the DVD of Animal Olympics. And he said, this is my favorite animated film when I was growing up. And I got Graham Gouldman, who did the music. Graham Gouldman from 10cc, wrote No Milk Today and Bus Stop for the Hollies, all these great songs. So we hired him to do the music. And that was also my choice. And this guy got Graham Gouldman to sign one of the slicks. And he sent it to me to sign another one of the slicks. And I mailed it out yesterday. And at the same time, 2 days before that, some guy in England contacted me. And he said, I'm in Manchester, and we went over to Strawberry Studios, and we got all of Graham Gouldman's recordings of the Animal Olympics soundtrack. We managed to get them, and and I transferred. I don't have a 30 IPS machine. I've got a 15 IPS machine, but we digitized it and fixed the speed. The speed was off, but so this just happened. So this stuff just pays back dividends years later. So,
well, you can probably understand that, though, right? Because of your love for music, though. Well, you feel the same way for other people. Yeah,
and then I supervised the whole soundtrack to the movie Tron, the first Tron movie. So
very cool. That's very cool.
Those are 2 cool things that I did before getting involved in the hi-fi business.
Yeah, that's really interesting because you are one of the biggest names in it and the most visual in the hi-fi. Like you've kind of crafted your own position in your own career, huh? Like it wasn't
it's nothing that I sat down and said, here's what I'm going to do. My goal, it was nothing like that. Right. There are people that do that, I suppose, but I never did.
Right.
I just do what I do. And whatever, I never thought it would turn into something where people ask for my autograph for being a hi-fi reviewer, but they do. And, I have a friend who's a surgeon. He writes for the Absolute Sound. And we were at Capitol Audio Fest together in November, and we're talking. And some guy comes up to me, puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, Mikey, you've changed my life. And he turned and walked away. And the surgeon goes, damn, I'm a surgeon. No one's ever said that to me. It's like, and it is very rewarding that the way people react to me, but it's nothing I courted or expected.
Right. But, well, I mean, you crafted it by doing your life, kind of like Mr. Magoo, everything's kind of coming down around you and you're kind of just going along and doing your thing and it works out.
That's right. And that's the most rewarding thing, especially the vinyl thing. When CDs came out and I heard them and I just thought they sounded terrible. And, and to me, it was like, well, this is not good sound. Let's not say it's good sound. Let's say it's a promising technology that's going to get better. And then it'll be good sound because no new technology shows up great.
Right.
And digital certainly didn't. And engineers didn't know how to use Pro Tools at first. Now it's gotten really good. If what we have now in streaming high resolution digital had been digital in 1986, I wouldn't have gone on my high horse. I still like records. I still think, there's something about holding up a record and taking it out of the jacket and having the liner notes and watching it spin on the turntable. There's something great about that. And I always said, if young people ever get to have that experience growing up in the digital age, I think they'll want it. And that's what's happened. Everything I predicted, I was on the Howard Stern show in 2001. And I said, Howard, vinyl is going to make a big comeback. And he just mocked me, and it was just fine. Being mocked by Howard Stern is a good thing. And I was right. I said it. I was on the Today Show in 1990 something with Brian Gumbel, and I predicted it. And all this stuff is around. People see this stuff, so it's very cool.
Well, look, the fall of vinyl. I dig vinyl a lot too. I like it more. I'd rather listen to vinyl. I think, and I talk about it a lot on the show, actually with the artists, because it's something you can hold. It's memories. Sometimes when you go, it's even best when you find records. Sometimes they have those weird smells. You don't know what it is. You still don't know what they are. Years later, you put a dryer sheet in it or something. You try cleaning them up. You try making them. They're treasures. It's a whole. It's a package. The liner notes. And it was before there were videos and you could read. You see pictures of the band on the bus. You're envisioning it in your head like a book.
Of course.
It's a whole tribal thing.
Like I've got the first Queen album. I've got over there the British version of it. And that was sent to me by Elektra Records because I did the national radio spots for Queen for the first 3 albums. And in that album is a letter from Brian May, a handwritten 2-page letter from Brian May telling me that my edits for the commercials are more interesting than their edits for the albums. Swear to God, it's in there. You can imagine being like a 20-something-year-old kid and getting that kind of thing. And then it said, signed Brian May, and he put Queen in parentheses in case I didn't know who he was.
That's funny. And I'm gonna say, right, the bigger the stars are and the more they're harder to get to because they're handlers and people. But when you talk about musicians that are larger, they're so down to earth, and a lot of times they don't assume who they are. Everyone knows who they are. I hear it all the time.
You want to see that letter? Here's the letter, and I really should put this under plastic. I keep saying I'm going to do it, and
I was literally going to say, why is it not under a frame or protected?
It's because I'm stupid. Okay, so there, there you can see. Is that backwards to you or look forwards to you?
No, it's right. You got it right.
Yeah, because to me it looks backwards, obviously.
Yeah, no, it's.
But it says signed Brian May, Queen.
It's a good handwriting.
Yeah, and it's from a hotel in the Netherlands. Well, actually, he stole the stationery because it has his home address there, 10 Queensgate, London. Now this thing is starting to. I'm stupid. I got to do something with this.
Every time the air hits it, it goes. You lose a little bit of it.
I don't know who to go to take it to put it under plastic. Do you know who?
I wouldn't know.
That kind of thing?
I have a hard time with like collecting things and not collecting things. It's my internal struggle. Like I don't want to put it on display, but it means a lot to me as a special moment with something, as much as it would be a family member or what else. You know what I mean? Whether you get records sent that are signed to you or books, but it's also collecting for me is kind of hard. And that's a good question for you. Like you have a lot of records and you listen to a lot of records. You have a beautiful sound system.
I have a stupid number of records. It's insane. You only seen part of it here.
What is the guess? What do you think you have now?
16 or 17,000.
Wow.
And I have stacks and stacks of unlistened. It's actually like the Midas touch. Everything turns to gold. So I have more record. It's uncomfortable to have people send me records to review, and if I don't review them, it gets uncomfortable, and I can't keep up with it. So what I'm going to do is, Rick Rubin said to me once. Did you see when Adele got her Grammy at one point? She got up and she was crying, and I want to thank Rick Rubin for giving me all this great advice, and without him. So Rick Rubin said to me once, he said, you should do video record reviews. You're good on camera.
Right.
Just pull up the record and review it. Don't write it. People like this, and I've never done that for one reason, because I like the written word for a review where you can really gather your thoughts and be more cogent rather than, because I don't like to say this is a great record. I want to be able to say more, and I can say more in print than I can, but I'm going to have to do that because I have stacks of records here.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
And talk about it. So I'm going to do that.
You have a way of speaking that's very fun and very to the point, but doing it as a video, and you can also do it as a podcast. People would love to hear it in the car and listen to it and get inspired by the music. It's all different videos.
I could do a podcast too. I've never done a podcast, and I really should do it. I've been on
So
other
easy.
podcasts.
So easy. I can talk to them about it after. I'll tell all about it. It's like,
Okay.
what's really neat is with vinyl, I realized there's a certain point that vinyl kind of towards the end, it started getting cheaper before it crashed out and CDs came in.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a big part of why it kind of also hurt itself, because the records were getting kind of cruddy? And
The records are getting worse, but cassettes are what really killed vinyl.
right.
Because cassettes were portable. Most people didn't care that much about sound quality, and records were the only thing you could buy to play music. So that's what they were stuck with. And for most people, records were a pain in the neck. You had to clean them, and you had to keep the stylus clean, and to take care of them, you had to do certain things.
Right, it was a lot of work.
That's why when you go to use record stores, well, not anymore, but when you went to use record stores when vinyl was going away, the records were trashed. These people didn't take care of them. They threw them around. They didn't, And when cassettes came out, the source was hidden in a plastic case, and you could manhandle them pretty much and stick it in, and it would play. Although if you were around for that period of time, you'd see tape wrapped around light posts, and
always with a pencil, getting anxiety just thinking about it. And then you'd open it up. Once again, you lose the ceremony. Who could read? Even my youngest 20-year-old eyes, I could not read a cassette flipped open to 18 pages and the lyrics. It's just like,
it was bad. But that beat out records.
So
sure it is. Yeah.
When vinyl started to go out, like I said, the vinyl records did get weaker. They weren't made as well. I remember like the records, like when they're like my grandparents' records compared to the records that were in towards the end of the 70s were like floppy, and they were really thin. Compared to the original vinyl were like thick. They're like weapons.
It started getting bad in the early in the late 60s, actually. I mean, I remember when records were tip-on jackets. So it was paper onto cardboard, beautiful laminated, and then the short pack came. I could pull out a short pack package, but it's where they print right on the paper that becomes the jacket, and then it gets glued in 3 parts, fold over, and they all came apart. Those things all came apart. It was horrible. And then the records inside got really floppy in the early 70s. Part of that was due to the oil embargo. And so that, PVC is made from oil. So the oil got costly. So they invented, Dynaflex to make the records really thin. They could use less. But you know what? Those records can sound great. They don't sound bad. If I play you an original copy of Lou Reed's Transformer, which is pressed on the thin RCA vinyl, it sounds incredible for whatever reason.
I'll bet everything sounds incredible on your system, though. I've seen videos of your system. It's insane.
It's pretty insane.
It's pretty.
You want me to turn this around so you can
Please
see
do.
it?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, it's pretty messy right now. Let's wait a second. Let's see what. I just accidentally clicked on. Wait a second.
I don't know if you had the same speakers you did in your video from a couple of years ago. It's.
These.
Yes, those are the speakers up there. Oh, those are beautiful.
So those are the Wilson XDXs.
Those are nice.
And I'm reviewing this. See this big casket on the ground there?
Yeah.
The Neil, it's right under the Neil Young archive box there.
Yeah.
That's a 585-pound amplifier that I'm reviewing. Griffin amplifier. So yeah, it's an insane system, and it's really the most fun. And the people who hate it, they look at the picture of it and they go, "Well, that can't sound very good. That giant speaker is stuffed into the corner of your room." And I say, "Yeah, it is, but it sounds great. Believe me, I wouldn't have bought those speakers if it didn't sound great, because
you have a good ear, anyhow. I mean,
very costly speakers." But I was the expert witness when Quincy Jones sued the estate of Michael Jackson. Did you watch that video? That was one of my best.
I did.
Videos.
Yes, I did.
That's probably
I like that one a lot.
That experience was one of the greatest experiences of my life. The pressure was intense, and I came through, and I walked out of there saying, "That's good." And so the money was great. I put that money away until something good came along. And these speakers, they're just
speakers. That video was probably full. I think I'd heard of you before, but I think that was my gateway drug into the world of Micro Fremer, your audio. And next thing you know, I'm watching videos, you go into record plants. I mean, so you talk about not just sound, but you sound quality, you audio gear, Then you have records, different things about records and history of different like record labels.
Yeah.
So you're not just like one dimension, you know, you're multidimensional, and all everything encompasses records and sound and players.
And yet, you know, there are people that know more than I know about a lot of things in the vinyl world, and that's fine. You can't know everything. You know, I got a 16-year-old kid writing for me who I have to say at this point knows more about a lot of what went on in the 60s than I know. For one thing, I don't remember a lot of what went on in the 60s.
Because you did it right.
He, you know, he can tell you now. He can go through. I was on the David Bowie tour. I was on the Ziggy Stardust tour in '72. You know, I traveled with them on the plane, and I went to all the shows. I went to New York, the famous Carnegie Hall show, and in Boston, and in Chicago and Detroit, and sat with them in the plane. And this kid obviously wasn't born till 2000 or whatever. He can go through all the live Bowie albums and tell you which musician was on what drugs and why they didn't play well that night. He's just encyclopedic like that. You know, he knows more about all the new CD formats coming from Japan. There are all these different formats, CD formats from Japan.
Really?
It's more about the physical, how the CDs are manufactured, and they have different improved sound on some of them. I don't follow that because I'm not that much into CDs, but he knows all that stuff. He's gonna
I'm not either.
He's gonna do a story for me on all these different Japanese-based CD formats. I don't know about it.
There's a certain point where it gets to be too much, though, for like at this point for people of our generation, where you're like,
yes,
you know,
yeah, there's too much. Same with music.
Yeah,
it's like,
and that's the problem you have there. I mean, you've got so much at this point.
Memory full, you know. Like I'd rather listen to the Kinks than some of the new stuff that's out now. Some of it's great. I listen to that too, but you know, he's heavily invested in Father John Misty, who, you know, he told me about. He's really good.
He is really good.
But I still would rather listen to, you know, stuff from when I was his age. It's just the way it is.
I go back in moods. I'm in a prog mood lately. I've been going back. I'm doing a lot of prog stuff. I think probably ever since when I had an interview with Jethro Tull and then Fish, I've been really doing a lot more prog listening lately, just in the mood phases. But it's old stuff. It's this. A bulk of my records are like, yes, Jethro Tull, Zappa, as we were talking about before,
sure.
Beatles.
Yeah.
I know you're a big Beatles fan too. You know.
Sure. I got to go to Abbey Road and listen to Beatles master tapes. I mean, how bad is that?
That's pretty awesome. You've done some pretty things I'm pretty envious
and you
of.
know, the story behind that is something that I tell young people. Now I don't have to convince young people about vinyl anymore because they get it. But there was a time when I went to the Princeton Record Exchange, and there were some young people there holding a Sufjan Stevens album on vinyl. And I felt obliged to go over and say, you know, that sounds better than the CD of it, because I had the CD. And she just looked at me and said, we know. And it was like, that's when I knew something was happening.
With the foot?
You know? But so in 1969, I moved to Boston, and I was going to law school, and I walked down the block, and there was a record store. And I saw up on, there were steps going up to get to the store. It was a corner store. It must have been like a pharmacy back in the 50s. And at the top was a point of purchase cardboard display with a bunch of records. And the records were sealed in plastic, but not in shrink wrap like we have, but in the UK plastic style, which was like a loosely fitting thing, because they knew that they didn't want the records to get warped. And so I knew it was an import, and I had started collecting imports at that point in time. So I got excited, and I walked up the top, and it was Abbey Road. And it had come out like 2 or 3 weeks earlier in the UK. So the guy that bought the records for the store bought it from the UK and brought it there. And I was so excited to buy that copy, which I still have, and I can pull it out. It's still the best sounding copy of Abbey Road that I've ever heard. And I've played it for 60 years or whatever. And I ended up doing the radio commercials for that store. And the kid who brought that record into that box and brought it to that store, his name's Steve Berkowitz. He was Steve Berkowitz. You may know that name, maybe you don't. Steve Berkowitz ended up working for Sony Legacy. He's in charge of the Dylan catalog and the Miles Davis catalog and a bunch of other catalogs in the reissue series. So Apple, you know, the Beatles Apple, they decided they were going to hire Steve Berkowitz to oversee the mono Beatles box. And so Steve Berkowitz said to them, why don't you invite Michael Fremer to come over to Abbey Road to watch us do this? So Steve Berkowitz put Abbey Road in 1969 in that record store. And then Steve Berkowitz in 2000 or whatever invited me to Abbey Road to see that. And the reason why they did that was because they read my kind of negative review of the stereo box set.
Okay.
Some of those records are okay, but a lot of them, and that was a digitized
Version.
vinyl that was, digitized at high resolution, and then they converted it to low resolution so that they could make CDs out of it.
Mm.
And it was done by committee. It wasn't like the vision of one person. And it just, to me, it wasn't that good. So one day I got a call in, I guess, 2010, and the guy said, I don't remember his name. He says, "This is so-and-so from Abbey Road. And, we the people read your write-up of the stereo box set, and you weren't too enthusiastic about it. So we've decided to do the mono box set from tape, all analog, the way you suggested it should be done. So how would you like to come and watch us do it?" It was like, and it was great. It was just, I had lunch with
Awesome.
Charles Martin, and it was great.
That is awesome. So that's like history right there. I mean, that is insane.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this though: the last release, the Get Back doc. How awesome!
I like what Giles has done with those reissues. They're very good. If you had only heard the American pressing of that stuff, and the American pressing of Abbey Road, and the American pressing of the White Album, this is a big improvement in most ways.
Yeah.
For various reasons. But I still prefer my original British pressings of the White Album and all of those records. They just have a certain sound, and to me, my brain is locked onto them. But the reissues, the remixes are great. Except the only bad remix they did was All Things Must Pass. That just was a mistake. And I don't know what happened, because the same guy did the John Lennon Imagine and all the other stuff. He remixed those. Those came out good. But All Things Must Pass was a disaster, just sonic disaster. And it's interesting because I don't know whether you saw this before I got pulled in, but Bobby Whitlock, who played on that record, did a YouTube video and just ripped it to shreds, and basically much more nasty than I was, and said exactly what I said. And he played on the record, so he has some understanding of what went on. And it was just a misfire. And they should just take the tapes and redo it. And I told the head of Apple Corps, who I know, I said, you should do the Beatles catalog in stereo over again, like you did the mono set. Take the tapes out; they're still in great shape. And yeah, there's mistakes on them. You can hear the mistakes, like on Rubber Soul. You can hear like a voice suddenly pop over to one channel.
Right.
And George Martin fixed some of that on the CD reissues. He remixed those things for stereo CDs, and it didn't come out well. I'm sorry, he did not do a good job. They should have just left it the way it was. And hopefully at some point they'll do that again. And hopefully at some point they'll reissue the mono box set, which is not in print anymore. It's crazy. The mono box set is not in print anymore. And it's
is it no demand for it? I mean, there's
a huge demand for it. It goes for like thousands of dollars now. They just said, well, it cost too much to produce. We weren't making any money. So raise the price and then make money. People want that box.
That's interesting though, because like, would you listen? So you have both. You listen to mono and stereo. Do you go back and forth listening to things like that? I would have a hard time listening to just mono. Maybe just because when I started listening to music, it's never been just mono.
Well, the original first bunch of records were way better in mono. Okay. Like the first few albums were meant for mono. So the vocals are on one channel, the instrumentals are on the other channel. And the reason they did that was then after the recording in post-production, they could adjust the level of the two and like the balance they got.
Right.
So to release it in stereo, where the vocals are here and the music is over there, that's not really satisfying.
That's stereo.
And that happened in the jazz world too. When stereo came out, I was so into it that to be able to hear different things out of different speakers, that is the coolest shit. Oh my God. And my brain didn't really register what was going on. So there's a very famous record. I have it here, but let's wait. It's called Art Pepper Meets the Rhythm Section. It's a contemporary record album. So you let's play that record, and the rhythm section is on one channel, and Art Pepper is on the other channel. So really, Art Pepper never meets the rhythm section unless you flip the mono switch, and then he meets them. So, you know, the older I got, the more sophisticated my listening, the more I realized a lot of these so-called stereo records are not really stereo.
Right.
They're just mono thing. And a lot of the Atlantic jazz records from the early days of stereo were that way too, where you hear all these musicians clustered in that channel, and then other musicians clustered in that channel, and maybe if you were lucky, there was a piano and a bass in the middle. But it's not satisfying. And when you hear the mono mix of that, which is what the record was supposed to be, it's much more satisfying.
Right. That's a good point. I mean, because you know, like say you're back in the day, you hook up your stereo wrong, you put on like a Queen or Van Halen albums, you'll know very fast it's not really what true stereo is. It's not, because you just won't hear half the songs because they'll put it in different things. So it's not a true.
But at least those were pan potted to produce a nice spread. Yeah. You know, because they have 30 tracks, 24 tracks to work with. Those are okay. It's the ones where they had to do it on 4 tracks, where it's a cluster over here and a cluster over there, or like with the Beatles, where they used up 3 of the tracks, then they mixed that down to 1 track, then they reused the 3 tracks, then they mixed, and that's why those early Beatle albums have issues, because what you're hearing is many generations down. Still came out great, unbelievably. So when they did the remixes, they went back to the stems, because EMI was smart and realized the Beatles were like everything, every scrap of tape was valuable. So those stems are the first generation. And so Giles was able to go back and remix and not have to suffer the problems of mixing it down to 1 channel. That's why if you listen to the early stereo Beatle albums, you'll hear all of a sudden, you know, George is over on Here Comes the Sun. George is over there. Why is he there? He should be in the middle. Well, they had to put him there because it was one of those cases where they had to do a pre-mix to do more. And so on the remix, there are a lot of improvements to the mix. It makes a lot more sense.
So actually, what's your feeling on the new Atmos?
I don't like that.
No, true Atmos though. I mean, not here's let me just put it on this one. Apple is doing it, where they're taking Atmos mixes that aren't true Atmoses, and it's not true to the producer. It looks like the other producer did it. And it's just a weird fake version of Atmos. I'm talking like a real version of Atmos.
I still don't like it. I think rock and roll, pop music, I don't like surround sound for it. No matter, you know, the early surround sound was ridiculous. I don't want to hear the drummer here and the background chicks over there. And, you know, because you know what that is? It's just mono again. It's the same crap where you had all the music there and the vocals here. So now they're doing the same, that kind of crap, and putting it in 5 channels. So it's even worse because it's 5 disconnected channels, and I don't like that. If it's classical music, if it's a live concert, yeah, because then you can get the space, the actual space that the music was played in, and that's fantastic. But how big is that? It's not very big. You know,
the technology got to catch up to it. You know,
I don't like all this processing. I just don't like it. But you know, that's just me. Like there was at the Exponent show in Chicago, they had a demo of Rocket Man by Elton John mixed to Dolby Atmos in 5.1 channels, and I thought it sounded horrible. It was all disconnected, all discombobulated, and when you put the vocal through the center channel speaker, which is never the same as the big left and right speaker, it's just coming out of this little box, and I don't like it. And I don't like Apple forcing it on people, because that's what's happening. They're forcing.
Well, right. And the mixing in it is really bad. And some songs, when I first this came out, I knew none of it was recorded, designed for that. They just put it in that, which is always bad to do. But first thing I did is I went and listened to Beatles. I wanted to hear. I listened, and I thought classical pulled it off the best. I also like classical music, and I like rock. I like everything. Yeah. But I thought it was the most forgiving of forcing Atmos on it, even though it wasn't an Atmos recording, because it's classical and it has, you're right, a lot of space, a lot of instruments. Right. Some of the rock sounded good. Some of the Beatles sounded good, because I think Beatles done right is great with a lot of space, because each thing is so special.
Yeah.
I've heard Atmos recordings recorded as supposed to be for Atmos.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
But you got to do it in mind when you're recording it, and you got to do it in mind for the rest of the world that's used to hearing stereo.
Right.
There's more to it than just making it that. And I don't think Atmos is for every kind of music or for every artist either.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know.
MQA though, I like. I don't know why there's even any kind of controversy over MQA. You know, MQA is a process where they can pack a high resolution file, a 192 up to 192 24-bit file, into a CD resolution file. So you can stream it, and if you have an MQA decoder, it will unpack it to higher resolution. If you don't, it'll be a 16-bit 44, and it's great. Some people think they can hear it, and there's another aspect of it that's even cooler, is that the guy that invented this, who's a genius, Bob Stewart, he used to work for Meridian. So the early CDs, when they would take analog recordings and make CDs out of them, they were just horrible.
Yeah.
So if you listen to Keith Jarrett's The Colne Concert, very famous ECM recording, and you have the record, it's an incredible live recording, and you see in space Keith Jarrett's piano, and you hear him playing, and then you see the space on the stage around him, and then you hear the reverb off the back wall of the of the stage, and you get the sense of three-dimensionality in the picture. When it came out on CD, all that was lost. It was like a jumble. You couldn't see any of that stuff. It was like just like this mess. And so the reason why that happened to a great degree was that the A to D converters in the early days had very bad filters in them, and the filter would ring and completely upset the phase relationship that's built into the recording. And so Bob Stewart, if he knew what the A to D converter was used to make the digital file, he can go back and what he calls deblur the file and reverse the negative aspect of the filter that was used, to digitize the signal. And he brought some of these files to a CES about 10 years ago, I guess, including that one, because I had that record, and the record is three-dimensional, and I got the CD, and it was like crap. And he played the file where he deblurred the recording, and it was three-dimensional, and you could hear the piano in space, and you could hear the reverb off the sounding board of his piano, and then you could hear the reverb in the back wall of the space, and then hear the space all around. It was great. And he does that even with new recordings, with much better A to D converters. He can go in and even improve those.
Wow.
But people
that's really
have
cool.
a problem with it for some reason. I don't know why.
I didn't know. That's really cool. Well, I want to thank you for I want to salute your time. I do want to end on one question for this and make a comment. People that don't have super high-end cleaners, you've got some really great cleaners that you do for cleaning records.
Yeah.
Entry level people are people that don't have super, a few of us have like a couple hundred records or whatever.
Right.
What do you say is the best way of cleaning? Because, people don't know. They just see these stupid things. They'll see the, lighter fluid cleaning and things like that would just make my heart cringe.
Who uses lighter fluid? Unscrupulous dealers, record dealers use lighter fluid because it shines up the record.
Right.
It also melts. It's bad. It's a very bad thing.
Which is why I just wanted to bring it up. I know I wanted to talk about it for a minute so people are watching. Please be aware of that. What is a good way that people can economically do it?
Very basic, really good cleaning system is a spin clean, which is, it's a rotary thing, and you put special fluid in the vat, and then you put the record and you spin it by hand, and then you take the record out and you clean it with a microfiber cloth, dry it with a microfiber cloth. And that works. It's surprisingly well. I've reviewed that. It's like $89, and it's a really good investment. And you really should do a wet cleaning of your records, even brand new records. People don't record pressing plants are not clean rooms. CDs are made in clean rooms. Records are made in dirty rooms. So it's a good thing to do. If you can go one step up from that, there are some really good vacuum-based machines that are like $400. That may be getting too much, but that's, if you're buying,
that's a fair price. Depends on your level of those are still reasonable prices for cleaning.
Yeah. There's a project one that's $400 and something. There's an Okinoki one that's around that much money. And also a lot of the people that are buying these cavitation-based machines, which cleans records the way you go to a jeweler and they throw it into a vat and it cleans it with micro bubbles. They're selling off their vacuum machines, and you can find them on eBay and other places for a couple $100, like the old VPIs. and there's a bunch of other brands, Nitty Gritty.
But it's worth it to clean. If you're spending,
Oh.
records now are like 30 or 40 bucks you're buying, you're already spending 30 or 40
Exactly.
bucks on something that you want to last for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. They're gonna outlive you. Why would you not want to have something to clean it that costs only 2 or 3 times the price that you use
It's like-
all the time?
When people say, "Oh, you clean records," it's like, look, I'm going to clean my glasses. Oh, you can clean glasses? I had no idea. And if
That makes you crazy. I walk around the house cleaning people's glasses. That makes you crazy.
Cleaning records and cleaning your stylus will also lead to the records lasting indefinitely and the stylus lasting way longer, because the dirt turns into grit and the stylus goes through it. High temperature is created in the groove. So high temperature and grease and dirt adheres to the stylus, and then it dries on the stylus, and the shape of the stylus then becomes something other than what it's supposed to be. So after a short period of time, people say, my records aren't sounding so good anymore. When is the last time you clean your stylus? Oh, how do you do that? You have to learn the basics of this to do it right. And if you learn the basics and just follow the basics, I'm telling you, I can pull out records here that I've played for 60 years and they still sound fantastic and better than any digital version that there is.
Do you still have, I know you talked about, you have you did a CD of setting up a record player. I've never actually seen it. Does it talk about other stuff too?
Yeah, DVD. I made a DVD called, and it's Michael, 21st Century Vinyl, Michael Fremer's Practical Guide to Turntable Setup. And I did that over 10 years ago. And when I did it, I called up a instructional DVD expert, and I said, so I'm making an instructional DVD. What's the shelf life, and how many you can expect to sell? And he said, well, if you're unless you're Jane Fonda doing a workout video, most of these things have a shelf life of like 3 or 4 years, and you can sell a couple of thousand, 3,000. That's pretty much the average. What's your subject matter? It's how to set up a turntable. He goes, okay, I take it back everything I said. It's like 2 years, 2,000 copies. I don't know why you're doing that, but so I did it on that basis, and it still sells. I still get a check every month for like $300-400.
That's good.
And I made my money back pretty quick. I've made a lot of money on this thing, and it's still it's kind of outdated now in the sense that things have changed somewhat. But I tell people, watch the video, and then you can go onto my channel and go on my YouTube channel, and I show updates of other things. It's still worth watching.
So can they buy that? Where can they order it? Do you want to get the CD?
It's on Amazon.
DVD.
It's on Acoustic Sounds. Type my name in, and you'll get that. And then there's a great MQA joke that I tell that it's great at hi-fi. Now that I've told you what MQA is, how it unpacks high resolution. They also have MQA CDs where if you have the right CD player, you put a CD in and it will unpack a high resolution file. So the joke I told is I went to England, I got COVID, which I did, and I got the worst variant. I got COVID MQA. You get COVID and it unpacks diphtheria and Peyronie's disease in your body. And I said, but it's okay. It's all straightened out now.
If
you don't know what MQA is, it's not funny. If you don't know what Peyronie's disease is, it's also not funny. But if you know what those are, it's very funny. It's a good joke.
It's a really high-end joke. It's a hi-fi joke. It really is a high-end.
Yes, it is. It is a hi-fi joke.
I do want to thank you. This has been awesome. I encourage people to check you out, check out your videos. You don't have to be even a record collector or anything. You're very entertaining. Your little stories, your little jokes. It's like they're right in a room with you. It's real.
I did stand-up comedy. I did stand-up comedy in the 70s. So
that makes sense.
That thing.
I played Max's a lot.
City. Max's Kansas City. I played Max's Kansas City twice. And that's not a comedy club by any means. And I went there because I played my guitar and I did impressions of rock stars, and I did a whole parody of MTV, and they loved it, and they invited me back. So they invited me back, and I said, can my parents come? So my parents went. At that point in time, they were very old. Well, no, I'm probably older now than they were, which is scary. But they were like the Floridian. They were like Jerry Seinfeld's parents.
Old back then is different old now than old now, though. Something happened.
Right. That's right. And they showed up. My father had the big white belt and the white shoes and the Incolor shirt, all different colors. And they sat in the back, and I went through this whole, and you know what? The people, like you were talking about musicians, being really nice. The more famous they are, the nicer they are. They the goth dressed crazy people, all in black with rings in
Yep.
their nose. They were so nice to my parents. And my parents learned a lesson in don't judge people by what they look like. It was just a great experience.
That's a good point. And that's a good point for everybody. Actually, I ended that thought because like you've talked to people, I've talked to a lot of people in the show, and almost the bigger the musicians, the more they've been out. There's a reason why they're around so long.
That's right.
They're kind, they're just like everybody else, they just write awesome music, or they have excellent technology. They're great inventors. But most of them are the salt of the earth. It's actually the younger ones or newer to the business are about what are your numbers, what are that? And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like 100 million albums, and they don't even ask for that kind of stuff. So look at everybody with open eyes. I mean,
You're right. When I did tours of the country for TDK, they used to make cassettes, and then they make blank CDs. So the first tour was how to convert your vinyl to cassette, so you could take your vinyl on the road. And this was in the late 80s, early 90s, and because vinyl was going away. And I would travel around the country, and when I did small market local TV shows, which most of them don't have it anymore, they had small, the people were like, oh yeah, the record thing, come on over here. And then at the end of the tour, I did the Today Show, and Brian Gumbel was so nice. I was so nervous. He was so nice. And I was nervous because one of the deals that I had to do with TDK, we'll put you on this tour and you have to hold up a TDK cassette. I said, well, okay, but I'm a journalist. I will hold it up. I will not say use TDK cassettes. I can't do that. I will say use a high quality cassette. Don't use a bargain cassette. Use a high quality cassette like this TDK. I'll do that. And they said, okay, in the magazine I was writing for said that's okay too. So I would do that. And then I got to the Today Show, and the producer of the segment said, look, this is the Today Show, and the Today Show is a product of NBC News. You cannot hold up that tape and say like TDK. You cannot do that. And the TDK publicist said, you must do that. So I was like so conflicted going into that. And I sat there, and then and it was Deborah Norville on one side and Brian Gumbel on the other side. And they're talking to me. And then I got to the point where it was like, and so when you make these cassettes, be sure to use a good brand of cassette, like TDK. I held it up. I did it. My hand went up. It was like Dr. Strangelove, and I did it, and nothing happened. And in fact, it went so well that when we went to the commercial break, Brian said, "Hey, hang around. Let's talk about Miles Davis and Kind of Blue," because I transcribed Kind of Blue from my turntable, which I still had a good turntable back then, to a cassette, and it still sounded fantastic over the television. And he said, let's talk more about vinyl. And so I got to go back on and talk more about vinyl. So it was cool.
That's cool. But I want to thank you, man, for being on the show. This has been really good.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. It's my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Okay.